Well, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Howdy Partner. Um, Super excited to get started here. For those of you who are just joining, Howdy Partner is our weekly show where we invite some of our cool partners of the APN Partner Network, and they get to show off some of the cool stuff that they've been building. And so today we're joined by NLX, and I'm super excited to be hanging out with them today. So back at reInvent, we met up at the little French bakery there. And that's where we first met, and I was like, oh, these guys are super cool. Like, I hope that, like, in the future we have some opportunities to work together. And so once we got going through this show and everything, I was like, we have to have them on. And so, Braden, can you just give a quick introduction to, like, what we're talking about today?
Great. Today we're going to be talking about conversational AI. So that means chatbots such as Alexa. So specifically, we'll be talking about how to build an Alexa skill to help our productivity in the workplace, specifically for developers. Now, a quick introduction as far as the topic. Let's talk a little bit about the design principles about the Alexa skill. Is that okay, Taz?
Yeah, let's go. Let's jump into it.
Perfect. Let's just jump right into it then. All right. So there's actually a white paper that AWS published, and they include 4 design principles around voice user interface. And then just as a quick recap or definition of what that is, voice user interface, as it sounds, is the manner in which we're able to interact with computers using our voice. Now, the interesting about this is that this is somewhat of a new space. It's not completely new, but it's still pretty relatively young. And if you think about all of the different ways we've interacted with computers, it started off with keyboards and mouse, right? And so we had to kind of adapt to clicking around and typing. And then a little bit down the road, touchscreens started to become a new thing, and websites, right? And so those created new types of interactions, right? We went from clicking on a website to tapping on the phone, or even trying to take advantage of, holding down on the iPhone where you can have the 3D touch, right? So there's new ways to explore each of these different ways to interact with a computer. And so with voice user interaction or voice user interface, this itself also needs to have designs wrapped around it because it's such a unique and different way to interact with the computer. And in this case, with an Alexa. Oh, and by the way, everybody listening, I am so sorry to not put this announcement up front. If you have an Alexa inside of your office, wherever you're watching this right now, I highly recommend muting it because that thing is going to trigger every 5 seconds during this episode. So I do apologize for not letting you know ahead of time. So with that, let's talk a little bit about those 4 principles of what VUI principle designs are. Okay, so there are actually 4 of them. So first one is adaptable, personal, available, and relatable. And we're going to, of course, dive into each one of those, but I wanted you to have all 4 of those up front so you can kind of follow the roadmap there. So let's talk about each of these design principles, why they're important, and how they can apply to when you're building a chatbot. So the first one here is be adaptable. And the way that I decided to be able to demonstrate this is, Taz, are you able to share? I'm sharing my screen right now. Can you go ahead and turn that up? Perfect.
Let's see here.
So,
oh, shoot.
Here we go. It's okay.
There we go.
Here we go. So this is a fun little screen right now, and it's covering Vlad there, right there. But the first question I have for chat here, and I want you guys to be able to actually interact here. So chat, let me know. What do you call these? Taz, what do you call these?
I don't know. I'd say some kind of a pastry. Some I don't know.
Okay.
Beignet, a beignet.
Yeah. Okay. So let me do this. Hey, we got an answer there. So let me give you these 3 options, right? So these are cut out of a donut. So this is like the middle parts that is cut out of a donut. So, and then they fry that on its own. So now, chat, what do you call these? Non-healthy?
Non-healthy. Get out of here.
Breakfast,
That's what
okay.
I'm talking about.
Yes. Okay. So as you can see, these are actually
Munchkins.
three very
All
valid
the way.
ways to talk about these, right? It's like I call them donut holes. And
What is
I see here in
Timbits?
the chat someone calls it munchkin. I've never heard of that. I've seen this fights on Reddit pretty recently, and they've actually surprised me because I didn't know there was other names for donut holes actually.
I've heard Munchkins and donut
But
holes. I've never heard of Timbits. If you've
yeah,
used this any time in your life, please. Oh, that makes sense. Tim Hortons. Okay.
yep, exactly.
Got
Right?
it. Chuck. Thanks.
Yep. All right, and let's do one more little quiz here to talk about adaptable, right? So here's a picture of some cans of a certain substance, and I want you guys to tell me what that substance is based on these three options. Soda.
It's a Coke.
Maybe. Yeah.
I-
Pop.
No, it's definitely
So-
Coke. I came from Atlanta. There's no.
I definitely say Coke all the way, regardless. If I want a Sprite, I still call it a Coke. So this is what I'm trying to convey. Taz, you can bring us all back now. So what I'm trying to convey here is that in order for an Alexa skill to be well designed, it needs to be adaptable. And as you can see, there are a lot of different ways to say things. I could say, Alexa, go turn off the lights, while Andre here would be able to just say turn off lights, like, super direct and simple. So that's what we mean by be adaptable. Make sure that the technology actually molds to the way that person wants to talk. And if you ever think about,
I think
sorry,
for
Taz,
me,
you gonna say something there?
I was thinking like, with especially with this use case, I think differing levels of politeness, I think absolutely factors in. You've got some people who are just like stop or no.
Yes.
And some people are like, oh no, thank you, never mind. Like, there are all kinds of ways to interact. I know I'm on the side of just like stop talking whenever I accidentally
I'm
get
exactly
triggered.
like that. So that's what we mean by be adaptable. Make sure that the user doesn't have to learn a whole new interface. Like, imagine if you were one of the first generations to learn keyboard and mouse, and how new that was, right? And so we don't want to have to introduce a whole new way of interacting. We actually want this to be very conversational, which we'll get to here towards the latter principle. But the main thing is we really want it to be conversational in the sense that they don't really have to think about how they're interacting. They're just interacting, and it's so natural. Okay? Now, the second principle is be personal, right? So let me demonstrate here. Andre, how was your day today?
Pretty good. Yeah.
Good? All right. Vlad, how was your day?
Not bad.
Not bad. Taz, how was your day?
Man, it could have been better.
There you go. See, so personal in this sense means a couple of things. First is you notice each person said something different, right? So that's something that makes it a lot less robotic and a lot more personal, because now all of a sudden Alexa isn't just saying, hey, Taz, how are you? Every single day. Hey, Taz, how are you? I'm good, right? It's creating an actual conversation that you feel like isn't so repetitive, right? And I believe that the words that I chose out of the white paper here is that it's predictable, yet varied and delightful. So that's one way, that's the first step into creating a personal experience with voice. But the next step, if you want to take it a step further, is you add memory. And what that means is that, have you ever been, either of you guys or anyone in chat actually, have you ever been to a restaurant where the servers always ask, have you dined with us before?
All the time.
Yeah,
Yep.
all the time, which I will say 50% of the time is a valid question. But let's just assume all of those questions are valid. Why? Imagine if you were able to go into such restaurants and they said, oh, Andre, how are you doing? Great to have you back. Tell you what, have a water on the house, right? And so, and just so you know, water's free, everybody, in case you didn't catch that. You'll always have a water on the house anywhere you go in a restaurant.
In the United States.
So anyway,
Make that
in
clear.
the United States, that's right.
There are some places where
Thank
you got to pay for that water.
But that second step of being personal is being able to remember that user in order to be able to interact with them and on a more personal level. Okay. So we're getting into the third principle here, which is be available, right? Now, there's a lot of, everyone has a smartphone these days. When you visit a website on that smartphone, you notice there's three lines that are all parallel to one another. It's the hamburger icon. You're all familiar with it, so I know I don't have to ask too much. So with that, make everything accessible at a high level. Be available is what we call it. And the reason is have you ever been on a customer service call and you wait for, and here's the voice. It goes, for billing, press 1. For products, press 2. For customer support, press 3. And it just goes down this list all the way through 9.
The answer
and
is
of course,
always 0.
Your option doesn't exist, right? So you're sitting there trying to guess which one is going to be the best fit. And at some point, you just press like a random number and you just get rerouted by a physical person. But that's what we're trying to avoid when we try to make it available, right? We want all of that mapping to the logic to happen on the back end, which you'll be able to see with Andre and Vlad. We'll be able to see how that mapping works a little bit, but you don't want the user to think too hard or at all, if possible. You just want them to be able to talk their command, and then it'll go map to the specific function on the back end, right? And so by removing menus, you actually remove friction, and you let that back end route it for the user, as opposed to the user with the phone example route it themselves. Okay, so we're getting to the last principle here, which is be relatable, right? So conversations specifically conversations with Alexa are driven to be cooperative, right? That means that this conversation is meant to drive things towards a mutual end. And that's kind of an interesting concept, right? So when we talk about driving towards a mutual end, it means being able to handle over answering, under answering, or even synonyms. So as you saw with the soda, Coke, and pop thing, let's take an example that's shared in the white paper, which is, what if you had an Alexa skill that's talked or mapped or, recommended a specific dog based on a couple of inputs from you, right? So 2 inputs being what size and what temperament, right? So somebody could go in and say, I would love a gigantic dog, right? And you don't want Alexa to be like, I can give you a small, medium, or large dog. Which would you prefer? That would work, but that's somewhat friction of an interaction. The best way to probably approach that is to say, okay, I have a few large dogs in mind, and what kind of temperament would you like to have with that dog, or would you like that dog to have, right? And so in that case, in that scenario, you not only understood what the user was trying to say when they said gigantic, you understood that to be large, but you're also driving that conversation, and you're saying, okay, large dog, got that. Let's see what other points do we need to collect in order to be able to recommend you a dog. And at that point, that conversation becomes collaborative, and you're saying, oh yeah, I think I would like a dog that's calm, right? Now, I'm not super familiar with dogs, I'm sorry. So chat, what's a large, calm dog? Can anyone let me know?
A Great Dane.
Great Dane?
I've heard they're one of the best apartment dogs, funny enough. They're huge, but they kind of just like to lounge around.
That's true?
That's what I've heard.
Anyone have a Great Dane?
Anyone have a Great Dane out there?
Let us know. So anyway, let's do a quick recap, right? So we got be adaptable, allow those users to use whatever words or phrases they would like and be able to map to the proper function. Be personal. Make sure that it's not so robotic, but it's an actual engagement or almost an interaction, all right? Be available. Make sure that those menu items are all brought up to the surface level so that all they have to do is say command and we map it for them in the back end. And then, of course, be relatable, which is being able to drive that conversation and understand what that user wants so that they can get to what they need, okay? So these are the 4 basic principles of voice user interface design. And that's something that will make your Alexa chatbot super successful. So for those of you guys that are just joining us, welcome to Howdy Partner. I just went over a quick overview of the voice user interface design principles. And today we have with us Andre and Vlad from NLX. And they'll be talking with us about how to build an Alexa skill. So Andre and Vlad, welcome.
Fine. Thank you. Good. Well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having us, guys. And we're very excited to be here. And I'm just going to hand it over to Vlad, who's going to use our, let's say, flagship product called NLX Studio to, let's say, enhance developer productivity. Since today's, developer focus, we're trying to come up with some interesting use cases that, let's say, most developers can relate to, and realistically, that's debugging, right? And especially as we were sort of monitoring some production systems, we routinely bump into issues, and then the sort of pathway to resolution involves like clicking into multiple different like services, especially on AWS, going into CloudWatch, finding the log group you want, and then trying to identify where exactly are the right logs to look at. And today we're going to build a skill on top of Alexa that allows you to get to the root cause within seconds, or I guess let's put it at speed of voice. So without further ado, Taz, if you could switch over to Vlad's screen share. Perfect.
Can everyone see it? Perfect. All right.
Here you go.
So welcome everyone again. My name is Vlad, and I'm going to go through the whole flow from subscribing to NLX Studio down to deploying your Alexa skill. So let's first go to the AWS Marketplace, where we can subscribe to NLX Studio for free. All you need to do is go to Discover Products and type in NLX Studio right there. All right, this is a fresh account, so I'll just continue to subscribe. Yes.
Hold on just 1 second. For some reason, it seems like we have frozen. Just get the last little screen share going here, and we should be good to go. Okay, great.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll move to.
Yep.
Wait.
We are good.
There we go.
We're back at it. Thanks everyone for bearing with us. That's the joy of live stuff, and too many people trying to connect to the internet at once for my apartment complex.
Cool. So I guess everyone can see the AWS Marketplace. So I just went into the console, typed in AWS Marketplace, and there's this neat feature where you can actually search for products. And NLX Studio is available on the AWS Marketplace, and you can subscribe free to it. So I'm going to go ahead and click the link, right? And it just took me to the Marketplace subscription page. I'm just going to click Continue to Subscribe. And then I can pick out terms and whatnot. I'm simply just going to pick the free tier and click Create Contract, $0.
Nice. Free's nice.
So now this will prompt me to set up my NLX account. So I'm going to go ahead and click Set Up Account.
And while Vlad is going through the sign-up process, I'll explain a little bit more about the product. Using NLX Studio, you can build and manage any type of what we call conversational AI applications. In line with what Braden was saying, there's a paradigm shift in terms of how applications are being delivered, right? We went from desktop applications to web applications to mobile applications, and then hey, now we have conversational applications, right? They can operate over chat, over voice, and so on. So using NLX Studio, you can build all these kinds of applications all in one place, and you can deploy across all the different channels from the same user interface. Most of the interface is actually, use a different, there we go. Click here to set up your account. There we go. Cool. So yeah, most of it's you'll see as part of the tutorial that it's pretty easy to build for the different kinds of mediums, whether that's chat or voice. And yes, NLX is using Auth0. I see someone is asking that over chat.
Nice catch.
Yeah, they were a guest on this show a couple weeks ago.
It's an awesome product.
Documentation. I think that's the obligatory comment I have to make at this point, is they have some of the best documentation and easy setup guides.
Okay, I did already. Should I pick another one?
Just pick the one you already had. It's okay. Or no, just sign up through the marketplace. Go back to the AWS marketplace.
Okay. Don't you hate it when someone steals your favorite username?
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't think Taz ever has that problem though. Taz.
No, I usually don't. While we're getting that, I can tell a little story. So my dad actually shares the same name as me, and when Gmail was becoming popular, I decided that I needed to reserve all of the derivations of our name before he could. And it wasn't until a few years later I got the satisfaction of him asking me if he could have one of the domains that I'd signed up for already.
So how much did you sell it to him for?
I was allowed to keep living at his home. This was back a while ago.
How they think.
So I guess room and board.
Yeah, we're having some trouble with the sign up here.
Okay.
A second. There we go.
No worries.
Right. So I just signed up into a new account, and essentially what you're gonna see is dashboard, and essentially it's broken down into bots. So at the top level you have bots, and then bots have intents, which is essentially, let's say, hello or greeting would be an intent, right? So let's just go ahead and create a bot right now. I'm just going to give it a name. I'll say howdy. Actually, wait. No. Not clone. My bad. Blank. So I'll create a blank bot. And then right now it says that I don't have any intents. So I'm just going to click finish. Perfect. OK. So there's a couple different screens right here. One is the attached intents, and another one is channels. So one bot can have multiple channels of interaction. For example, one, it could be Slack, Facebook Messenger, it could be Amazon Connect, or even Amazon Alexa, which we're going to show you. So I'll just go ahead and create an API channel for now. And let's go ahead and create our first intent. So I'll go ahead here, and then
we do have a question from chat here. What about custom channels? Is that a possibility?
Yes. Go ahead.
Yes. So actually, Vlad, if you can go, maybe open in a new tab, open up the bot. We have what we call an API channel. And actually, we recommend you start with that just because it's the most versatile one. And we, on our documentation, I think it's part of the links. And if not, I'm just going to type it in chat right now. You can actually see how you can interact with the API channel. Plus, we have a handy JavaScript SDK that you can use to put on your website and so on. Yeah, cool.
So let's create a hello intent for now, just to see how it works. So I'm going to go to the intents page, create an intent. I'll just say greeting. And I can add some sample phrases. So I'm going to say hello, hi, hey, howdy,
So to kind of, again, echo what Braden was saying earlier, right? You want to provide training data to let's say, the skill in such a way where it will be able to capture the different variances of how people might speak, right? Hi, hello, what's up might be common in certain parts of the world, whereas howdy and or other variations of that in English in other parts, right? So for now, we're just, for the purposes of the showcase today, we're going to stick to just a couple variations, but just know that your conversation applications will be ever evolving, because as you start putting them in production, you'll start seeing people finding completely new ways to talk to your application. So it will be an ongoing training process.
So I'm going to hit finish here. And then this is my intent. So again, you'll notice a bunch of different panels. Obviously, one of the most important ones are the training phrases, as Andre said. Then more importantly, we also have the conversation trees. So the concept for a conversation tree is almost like a dialogue, right? When you speak something, you could say, let's say, I want to order pizza. Well, what toppings would you like? Obviously, let's say, if you imagine it as a tree, each topping might be a leaf of, let's say, if you imagine, let's say, a tree, a binary tree, for example, right? Topping number 1 would be a leaf, and then topping number 2 would be another leaf. Now, it wouldn't be as efficient to, let's say, specify all the possible values. So we're going to show you a few tricks that the conversation tree can do, so you don't actually have to specify everything. So don't be scared when we say conversation tree. It's not like you have to hard code everything. So this is a tree for the API channel. So you can have a tree for each channel, mainly because you want to tailor the content based on the channel. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I can send you a paragraph over SMS and you could read it. But if I send you a paragraph over Alexa, you probably wouldn't sit there and listen to all of it, right? So you'd want to tailor the content for the intent for each channel. So right now I'm on the first node of the tree, and I can just say something in the messages. I'll say, hi there.
Maybe show the variation. So again, I'll keep going back to what Braden was, the principles that Braden was talking about earlier. We have functionality here where you can introduce, let's say, variations or rephrasings of the same sentence, which the NLX Studio bot in practice will end up randomizing, such that every time someone says hello to your application, it will respond slightly differently, and this will make it be a lot more dynamic and pleasant and human in the end, right? Because that's the whole point, to make these applications as human as possible. Go on.
So we just saved it. So right now, let's go back to the bots page. So I'm going to click on Howdy again, and we're going to attach the greeting intent. So notice that intents are actually global. So let's say if you wanted to create 10 different bots, let's say servicing 10 Alexa skills, or if half of them do Alexa skills, half of them do Slack bots, you can reuse the intents, right? So for example, you wouldn't want to create the greeting 1,000 times for 1,000 channels, right? You can just create it once and then use it everywhere. So right now I'm just going to attach it. And before we deploy and test this bot, I'm going to show you how easy it is to essentially link NLX Studio to Lex. So Lex is essentially the NLP that NLX Studio is using behind the scenes.
So Vlad, what is NLX? Or sorry, NLX, NLP for those that aren't familiar.
Sure. So NLP stands for Natural Language Processing. So remember the intent, right? Intent is a construct in natural language processing. So let's say if I say, hello there, the natural language processing engine will tell me that, hey, I think this is a greeting, right? If I had 10 intents, right? And then I say hi, obviously it says I'm 90% confident that this is a greeting. But if I say something else, the confidence will drop just because, let's say, the other 10 will probably fit into that category, right? So let's say if I have buy and buy, if I say buy, then the NLP will return that it's sort of like a buy intent.
Cool. Thank you.
And Lex, to kind of continue, and Vlad, you can
Sure.
continue with the demo, but Lex is Amazon's natural language processing engine. It's very versatile, and we chose to integrate it into NLX because of its versatility. And while Alexa is unique in the sense that it's both a channel and an NLP engine because it provides it performs the NLP process for you, or the intent detection, if you may. For the textual channels, you actually need to use a separate NLP engine. So in this case, we integrate with Lex, and we make it very easy for AWS customers to do so. Vlad is going to click on a link in a second, which takes you to CloudFormation. We engineered the CloudFormation template that allows you to point and click and essentially create an IAM role, or I guess in AWS layman's terms, just like the set of permissions required for NLX to manage your Lex bots, your Lex assistants. So once Vlad hits create, within just a few seconds, we're going to be able to get the necessary value. Let's see. We're going to have to copy the Amazon resource name or the identifier for the IAM role that gets created here and paste it back to NLX, which will complete the, let's say, the setup between NLX Studio and your AWS account.
And just to comment on that, like, I think it's great that we're using these roles for that authentication there, because, like, you know, with a role you don't have any like long persisting credentials or anything like that. It just makes it a lot more safer for you to be able to connect to two systems when one of them is holding AWS resources. So that's pretty cool.
So I'll go ahead, I copied that role from CloudFormation from the output, and I'm gonna paste it in here in the settings page, and I'll hit create. There you go. Now NLX Studio will essentially manage Amazon Lex with the account that you just linked. So I'll move back to the bots page, and I'll click on Howdy. And up to the top, you'll see that there's a builds link. So I'm going to go ahead and click it. And this is where essentially you'll see all of your builds and deployments, right? Almost like CloudFormation, if you think about it.
And conceptually here, builds entail, or the builds process in NLX Studio entails getting all your content, all your bot settings, integrations, whatever you sort of like build for your bot. It takes a snapshot in time of all those resources, and then it ends up compiling that into a single build. And the deployment of it entails, sort of deploying that on NLX managed servers, so to speak, so that your bot can be accessible to the world, so to speak. Under the hood, you can see here in the table that we use Lex as an NLP engine. Essentially, what's happening here is we leverage that IAM role that was just created to gain permissions to your account, and specifically the account that Vlad was operating in, and create a Lex bot for the Howdy bot in NLX Studio. So we make this very seamless. Once you kind of do that setup once, it's very easy to build, deploy, and sort of do your work in NLX Studio.
So a question there, Andre, is the Lex engine that we just saw you guys click, is that something that you guys have already trained, or is that something that you've spun up for us and is ready for our own training?
It's actually, that's a very good question. It's actually spun up for you, and it has strictly the training data that you provided to the bot so far. So Vlad, if you go real quick to back to AWS and search for Lex, we're going to show you what resources NLX Studio created under the hood during the build process. You can see the Howdy bot that was created just a couple minutes ago. And if you click into it, we should see just a handful of intents. specifically the greeting one, and there's a couple other what we call like NLX internal intents that we use to sort of facilitate some other, let's say, default features for your bots.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and right now I'm going to go back to Studio and essentially click Deploy on my build, and create the deployment. I'm just going to wait a couple seconds here.
And shortly after this, we're going to test the assistant within, I guess, our user interface. And the purpose of this first part of the let's say the demo, the showcase, is to just show you a simple end-to-end on how to get a, let's call it a hello world bot working. And soon after this, we're going to make it more interesting. We're going to start adding like logic to it. We're going to hook it up to some other services on AWS, and eventually we're going to publish it to Alexa. So Vlad, if you want to
Sure.
say hi.
Just say hi. Takes a while just because it's talking to it the first time, but you can see it said hello there. And then obviously I only trained it on one intent. So if I say something else like, I don't know, let's say I want pizza.
True statement anytime.
It will not understand just because we don't have an intent that can handle that, right? The NLP engine, Lex, will know what that is just because we haven't created an intent for it. So this is essentially how the whole, let's say, workflow of building and deploying your sort of NLX bot. And now let's go ahead and create something more interesting, right? Because hello, it's not that compelling.
I don't know. Sometimes I think we're all just looking for somebody to talk to.
That is true as well. So let me go ahead and create a new intent, and then Andre can fill you in into what we're actually going to do here.
Yes. So as we were preparing for today's session, we were brainstorming like interesting things that we can showcase that, let's say, the audience might find useful. And we, as I mentioned earlier, we figured out that maybe something around developer productivity might be useful. And specifically, again, we find ourselves like debugging systems all the time, and if something takes 5 clicks and it's repetitive, why not reduce it to 1, right? So what we're going to build today is the capability to just speak to, let's say, a chatbot or a voice assistant through Alexa, so an Alexa skill, and just tell it to pull up logs for a specific system, and maybe give it a time period. Like, let's say, like, give me the logs for our natural language understanding service for the past 5 minutes, and then magically, between Alexa and NLX and a bunch of other services, you'll get pinged over Slack with a link that points directly to where you need to go. Cool. So yeah. I see someone's asking in chat, but you can go ahead and play with it.
Because
I see. So I see someone is asking like how we're using the NLP. Do we train our own model or use an Amazon pre-built model? The short answer is neither. So we actually make it very transparent to the customer and the user. Whatever training data you provide in NLX Studio, then that gets compiled and built into the NLP engine that you choose. So in this case, Amazon Lex. Or if you also use Alexa, it will be submitted to Alexa. And then Amazon obviously takes it from there. AWS has special, let's say, pretty sophisticated like machine learning models that will expand this brief training data and sort of add all kinds of like variation and noise in it, such that when different people might say slightly different things and phrasings, it will still be able to pick that up.
Cool. So the reason why I stopped is essentially I want to introduce you guys to a new component, so to speak, of NLP, which is called slots, right? So here's some sample phrases that I said where it's like, I want to see logs, I want to see the logs and whatnot. But let's say, what if I wanted to say, I want to see the logs for the ECS cluster from the past 5 minutes, right? So you wouldn't go ahead and train or write phrases like that, right? You wouldn't say, I want to see the ECS logs, and then you would say, I want to see the Lambda logs.
Right, because you'd be stuck like writing every permutation of everything that you could possibly want, and depending on how many combinations you have there, throw it in the chat if you remember the combinations formula. I'll be impressed.
So what I'm actually gonna do is I'll just hit save on this for now, and I'm gonna go to the slots on the left, right? So I'll go ahead and create a slot, and I'll guide you through what that actually means. So I'm just gonna say AWS log group, and then I'm gonna say Lambda, for example. So obviously, let's say you'll see further down this demo, but essentially, when we talk about logs, we already know the name of the service, right? So it could be, let's say, the image processing server, the Lambda server. Whenever you talk to someone, you're not just gonna like give them, let's say, the full string of the log group. So what we're doing here is essentially boiling down that, let's say, log group into something that we can say and remember. So let's just say we have a service that handles some accounts. I can, for example, say just account Lambda. And sometimes, let's say if you don't remember what it was that you wanted to say, let's say you say maybe accounts Lambda or Lambda account, you can also give it synonyms. So essentially, you can provide the multitude of values that you can say, and they'll all actually resolve to this top value all the time. So you'll see further down the road that when we do the mapping between the slot value and the actual AWS log group, this will help us a lot in conversation. I'll just switch it.
So yeah, Vlad will enter a bunch of variations and things, but conceptually, if you were to let's say, build this use case for your own account or company, which we hope you do, you find this useful, you'd enter here all kinds of values for the slot that map onto, let's say, user-friendly names for systems within your organization, right? In our case, we use ECS for some of our systems, so hence why you see the ECS cluster. Then the account Lambda is another, like, let's say, part of our system that routinely gets revisited for various different reasons. So we're just gonna add a couple of these systems here, and then we're gonna show you how you tie those into the intent.
Yeah. So I'll quickly slide over to the intent, the AWS logs, and I'm going to go ahead and delete these because I don't want to basically specify every possible value. And I'm going to attach a slot. So I'm attaching a slot to the intent itself so I can actually use it. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick the AWS log group. I'll just say what log group shall that be? And I'm going to hit attach slot, right? So now the slot is attached. Therefore, I can say things like, show me the logs for, and then I just do a curly brace, and it will just pop up and give me a suggestion. This is the only slot I have, therefore I'm going to select it. So let's say if I had, for some reason, I had 200 slot values, that means that this phrase, no matter what the 200 slot values will be, is enough to essentially capture all of them, right? Without me having to enter all of it. So this is kind of like the pattern that we're following, where many say that you need a lot of data to train these systems, and they're not wrong. It's just that for training phrases specifically for intents, if you pair them smartly with slots, you'll find that you don't need more than, let's say, in some cases 10, in some cases 30 different ways of saying things. And you kind of figure that out as you, let's say, build it and talk to it, and then you figure out that every single time you find a different way of saying it. And it's really easy to just keep adding on to it.
And while Vlad is adding some more training data here, I saw an interesting question in the chat, and Chuck was asking, like, wouldn't your slots be like region and service and stuff like that? And you totally can. It's very open-ended as to how you might structure the names of these slots or how you want to use them in the phrasings. It's a matter of how you expect your users to interact with the service. From an AWS standpoint, right, the regions range from like US East 1 to US East 2 to US West 1, and then European Central, whatever, all the different regions. Now, an interesting thing when you're designing these sorts of applications is that you can't, like, there's certain things that work well over something like chat, but they don't work as well over voice. So if you actually try to say and capture effectively like US East 1, US East 2, and things like that over Alexa, it might not always be very accurate, because it's not a very, let's say, intuitive thing to sort of pick up in voice. So that's why we elected to use slots more, to use more like the friendly names for the systems to guarantee that Alexa would pick them up a lot easier.
Yep. And now essentially I'll show you how we can actually use those slots inside the conversation tree. And you'll see me going back and forth to the intent. So bear with me here. So I'm just going to open essentially the conversation tree to capturing the slot. So what this does is the root node, when it enters it, let's say if it didn't capture the AWS log group, I can say, what log group do you want?
This is really cool that it maps out this conversation, because the other white paper that I'm sure you guys have read talks about one of the best practices is to actually draw and map out that conversation flow. And so it's kind of cool that you guys just have that done right here for you, and you can leverage that tool right there.
Yep. And then you'll see that there's it splits them into choices. That's not let's say necessary. So I can essentially not show the choices, and right now this will essentially just capture the slot and do nothing with it. But let me actually go back to the intent to show you something else, because whenever you say you want the logs for something, you're also thinking a timeline, right? You want to say, let's say, I want the latest 30 seconds because something just went wrong right now and I don't know why. Or maybe you want the last day. So we're going to attach another slot that essentially defines the time frame. So I can say things like, I want the past 20 minutes of the Lambda logs, right? Luckily enough, you don't have to create those complex slots. We can essentially just say duration here, and I'll just name it time frame. And I'm going to attach this slot. So right now, I have two slots, one to get the log group and one to get the time frame. So I'm actually going to go ahead and add a couple more training phrases where I can say, show me the past, let's say, time frame. So whether that's days, weeks, or seconds. Show me the past, let's say, 2 seconds of the, and then I'm going to say the log group name, logs, right? So this will allow me to essentially mention everything that I want, right? And you will see, and we'll see in the example that, yes, the tree will capture and ask for every slot value, but we can actually jump. So as Braden mentioned in the intro, right, you want to be smart about it and kind of not ask the same question again. If I told you already that I want the past 20 minutes of the Lambda logs, you're not going to ask me which log group and then what timeline, right? So I'll quickly go back to the conversation tree here, and I am going to delete this node because I don't need that, right? And then here, I am actually going to say that the condition to arrive at this node is to essentially have the AWS log group. So I'm going to say if the AWS log group exists, you can pass on to this node. So just say time frame. Now I'm going to essentially ask for the time frame. So again, I pick what I want to branch on. I'll pick a slot again. And then this time, I'm going to go and select time frame. So what this does is essentially, let's say if I just say, show me the logs, it will ask what log group, and then it will go ahead and ask for what the time frame is, right? Remember when I added that training data, which essentially said, show me the past 20 minutes of X, if I said that, it would actually automatically jump to this last node without actually having to ask again. And let me just add something here. What timeline? Time frame, I guess.
And while he does that, let me just put in a quick plug here, just for those who have recently joined the stream. This is Howdy Partner, where we bring on a partner to show off and showcase what the cool things they're doing on AWS. So today we have Andre and Vlad from NLX, who are sharing with us on how to build an Alexa skill. So that's what we're doing right now, Vlad.
Yeah, so
Awesome.
I have a quick question about those slots. So we talked about, if I say, show me the last 2 days of this log group, it'll kind of skip to the end. What if I only say one of them? What if I say, like, show me the log group logs? Or if I say, just show me the past 20 minutes of logs? Like, how will that be handled?
So perfect question, and it just handles it in order, right? So our sort of conversational engine that manages all of these conversation trees knows what slots were filled and which were not. So it knows how to ask for the missing slots wherever let's say you find yourself in the conversation tree. So if you just said, show me the logs for the ECS cluster, obviously you need the time frame, so it'll just jump this first node and then actually jump to the second one to ask you about the time frame.
Cool.
Okay, so let's say at this point right now we collected the log group and we collected the time frame. Now we essentially want to go ahead and sort of create let's say the URL, right? To create the URL for CloudWatch. Well, to do that, we're going to actually introduce a new component to this, which we call variables. So a variable is nothing more than, let's say, sort of like a dynamic slot that's tied to a URL. So, and Andre can talk over this while I go and create one.
Sure. So conceptually, you'll use variables within NLX Studio whenever you're trying to pull data from an external system. Vlad's going to create one for sort of retrieving information about a specific log group that will then pass around throughout the state of the conversation to ultimately slack a custom URL for the specific log group in question. And you'll see now that variables have a couple different types. They can be just like simple text or a list of just text or strings, object or list of object. We're going to use an object here, and the properties of an object is that they'll have a set of key value pairs or expected key value pairs. And this type of mapping is useful So NLX can map from whatever your external system might be, and then map back into our natural language understanding engine, so we can operate on whatever data fields or data points you want to do. And what Vlad did earlier, we actually provide you with similar to what we did for Amazon Lex. We provide a very sort of like point and click sample webhook endpoint or API, RESTful API endpoint into AWS. And once you create it, it pretty much stands up an API gateway connected to a Lambda with boilerplate code for what we would expect a variable, sort of request response to look like. It's built in Node.js. Sorry if any of you have some other preferences, but the code is pretty lightweight, and you'll see it in a second. So once this template completes, Vlad will go to the outputs tab in CloudFormation, copy the endpoint, and then paste it back to the variable panel in NLX Studio, so we can provide the integration point for the variable. And then in conversation, whenever NLX bumps into, let's say the NLX bot bumps into this variable, if it doesn't already have data for it, it's going to make an HTTP REST call to that endpoint, requesting the specific variable, in this case, AWS log group get, and it essentially, once that the request, assuming that the request is successful, it will then map all the different fields that Vlad's going to define here for this variable back into the, let's say, NLX variable object.
Yep. So there's also a GitHub link. I think you can type in exclamation point.
Yes, I'm going to type.
So there's a GitHub link with all the webhooks that we're going to use in this demo. So it essentially covers the two webhooks, one for CloudWatch and one for Slack. Right now, we're going to implement the one for CloudWatch. And you have the zips ready if you don't want to bother with deploying it, or you also have the actual code if you have your own deployment pipeline. So what I'm going to do here is go back to AWS before I use the webhook and actually deploy the Lambda. So I'm just going to click on the webhook that the CloudFormation template just created. And this is the boilerplate code that Andre was essentially referencing. So we are going to replace this with one of the zip files. So I'm just going to go ahead and upload the zip file. And I'm already in the repository. I'll just select CloudWatch, save. And there you go. This is our CloudWatch function. You can go ahead and read through it if you like. What it simply does is it receives the request from NLX, and essentially we get the slots, right? So by the time this variable is called, we would actually get the slot values that we can use to essentially construct our CloudWatch URL that we're going to use to send it to Slack.
And in other words, it will take the slot values captured through conversation and try to map them against one of your, let's say, log groups. So for instance, at the top of this function, and you can see it on GitHub as well, there's a little hash map that maps from, let's say, colloquial slot names like the ACS service or the, let's say, production system or whatever it might be, onto actual full AWS CloudWatch log group names. And it's just like a simple way to go from like just regular speaking, right? Because if let's say if I'm talking to Taz or to Braden, I'm not gonna tell them, hey, go to /AWS/ whatever the full log group name is, right? It's very difficult. So this is a simple example of how you can take let's say, human-friendly language and map it into something more complex to ultimately get to what you're trying to accomplish.
I'm just going to go ahead and copy some CloudWatch logs. Again, this is a new account. I created an empty one, and we're also going to essentially query the log group of the actual Lambda function that we're writing right here. So I'm going to leave this quickly empty, just so I can actually get the full log group name. But this is essentially the map, right? So remember, we had the slots, and these are the values that the slots will resolve to. This is where essentially we would put the CloudWatch log group, and we would be essentially able to do the end-to-end to query CloudWatch to see if there's logs and create the link. So I'm just going to hit save here, and you'll notice that in the, let's say, zip or the code, there's some hard-coded slots. So I have created a different, let's say, slot value name. So if I go back to the intent, the name that we actually want to use are the ones that are attached to the slot. So a slot can have the same name, let's say, when it's attached or not. So one example for this is destination, right? Let's say if you want to fly from point A to point B, you're going to use the exact same slot, which is, let's say, location. And then you would give it two names. So you give it destination, and then you would attach the same slot and just say departure, right? So from where you go and where you arrive. Now, I'm going to copy this and then go back to my Lambda function and replace it here. Okay. All good. I hit save.
You can see that it's a real demo because we forgot the names we originally used in preparation for it. So.
And just to get one of these events, I'm just going to create a...
So now Vlad's going to invoke the Lambda function basically to create a second CloudWatch log group. So you see, we're trying to map two values onto two log groups. So within a couple seconds.
There you go.
There we go.
We got it. So this is the actual... Oh, that was predictable. I could have just written that myself. All right. So I'm going to save this here. So we're all done, supposedly, with this function. Let me just quickly scroll through.
Double check those variable names.
Yeah, exactly. So we have that correct. And then AWS log. There's another thing here, the variable ID. So this is important. The variable that I just created, I gave it a different name again, props to the real demo. So I'm going to copy this variable name and paste it in here and save it. Okay, all done here. Right now, remember that the variable has fields, right? So we can add multiple fields, and it's going to return an object. So if I go back to the webhook, this is the function that essentially will return these 4 fields. So what I find useful in conversation is obviously getting the CloudWatch URL, the log group name, the time, and we'll go back to that, why it's important, and then whether it's empty or not. This is important because, let's say, if I say, hey, give me the log groups for this, and there's no logs, let's say, in that time frame, well, it should just tell me, hey, there's no logs, and not send me a link, and then I would have to go and click just to find out that there's nothing. So I'm just going to go ahead and essentially just copy paste these key names into NLX Studio. So
and what Vlad was just touching on is an important aspect of making these sort of conversation applications and these sort of let's say interactions, especially over voice, as natural as possible. And for that, you just have to handle a lot of different unique scenarios, but handle them in a way where, let's say, you don't expect that the human is a robot, right? The output, like Vlad said, sometimes you just don't have logs. So then just say you don't have logs instead of just sending a link that takes you to a dead end.
So I'm going to go back to the conversation tree and essentially start using that variable. Now I'm going to introduce a new node type, which is called pass-through. So what this essentially allows me to do is add more conditions and respond differently based on the conditions. So as Andre was saying, one condition is there's no logs. The other condition is there are logs. And then there's two extra notes here, which is if something goes wrong with, let's say, the variable, you can have a fallback intent. So rather than saying something went wrong, you could have a separate process build it so that it continues the experience, let's say, with a fallback intent or something else, right? Different messages.
It could be like, I know a common mistake that I make is I'll be looking for something in the AWS console and realize I'm in the wrong region or something like that.
Yep.
You know, if region was one of those slots there, that could be something like it, you know, are you sure you had the right region?
Exactly.
It's like, hey, sorry, I couldn't find ECS service under this account. Like,
Right.
are you sure you're even authorized to get access to this? Like,
right.
Right. So I'm gonna say here, for this, I'm gonna say if the variable AWS log group get is empty. So I'm just gonna say this would be true actually, because I can't spell. So if this is empty, well, I'm just gonna respond with the log group is empty for that time frame, right? Now, let's just say for the fallback, I'm just gonna say something went wrong. Okay. And then something failed.
Something went really wrong. And actually, failure is something where, let's say something like the network call failed or anything like that. And fallback is more like the catch-all, the else statement within the conversation, so to speak. So,
yep. And obviously, this is just one condition. So I'm going to select the plus button here and add another node. And essentially, in this way, I can actually have multiple conditions. And let me actually just move it closer because.
Right. And we'll essentially need we're working with two primary nodes here. One of them is, or two situations. One is when we don't have, where the log group is empty, and then now Vlad's gonna like build out the use case, or I guess the path where we actually have logs for the requested time frame.
Yep. And before I actually do that, so here we obviously say there's no log groups and whatnot, but we actually want to send messages to Slack. So obviously there's nowhere here where you can actually send a message to Slack. So we're introducing another component which is called an action. Now the difference between an action and a variable is the action is just something like, let's say, turning on the lights, right? It doesn't really need to respond in conversation with anything. It's simply just going to turn them on, and you may be able to just say it succeeded or it failed. So I'll go ahead and create an action, and I'm just going to say send Slack message, right? And I'm just going to say external for now, finish. And similar to what we did with the webhook, for the variable, we can again deploy a CloudFormation template. So I'm just going to click this real quick. And let me just name it the same. There we go. Remove the spaces. Okay. And this is going to essentially create the second Lambda function that we're going to use to send the Slack message.
So can we review these three cloud formations real quick? So the first one was to create the actual engine itself, right? To train. Yeah. The next one is to grab the log groups, and then the last one is to actually push that message out to the destination, in this case, Slack, correct?
Exactly. Correct. And, cool. And the first one, just a slight correction. The first template, has to do with a one-time setup that gives NLX the necessary permissions, the access to that IAM role.
I see.
To keep creating Lex bots on your behalf, right? So like it's not just this one. If we create another one, you're not going to have to redo the step. It will just kind of under the hood. Yeah, it's
that's
really
cool. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So right here, it created it. So I'm going to move over to the Lambda function now. And similar to what I did before, the code is on GitHub. So I'm just going to say upload zip.
And while Vlad is doing this, I know probably some of you watching, you're wondering like, where is Alexa in all of this? And you're going to see it very soon. And part of the build-up is we're going to show you how we're going to build this for chat, and then how in literally a minute, or let me not compete with that. Let's say 2 minutes. Connect.
I'll hold you to it.
Right. So how you can use the work that you're doing across NLX Studio and then deploy it across as many channels as you may wish.
Yep. So right here, obviously it asks for a Slack webhook, which is actually coming from the environment variables. So quickly, I'm going to go over to the Slack dashboard, so to speak, and create a new application. I'm just going to say Howdy Partner, and then pick our workspace here. And this is essentially, I'm just copying an incoming webhook so I can actually send messages. So I created a Slack application, enabled incoming webhooks, and then I'm essentially adding it to the workspace. So let me pick the channel, and I think it was Howdy Partner. So I'm going to allow the Slack application that I just created, specifically the incoming webhook, to send messages to the Howdy Partner channel. So I'll hit allow, and all that I actually need is this webhook URL. So I'm going to copy it and go back to my Lambda function, not this one, the Slack Lambda function. And actually, let's see, Slack webhook path. So that's what I need to set. So I'm going to go into the environment variables and just say Slack path. And then I don't need actually the full URL, so I'm just going to give it the path. And let's verify that it's correct. Perfect. I'm going to save it. So now this Lambda function should be able to send messages to that Slack channel. Okay, so now this is done. Important thing to note is that this action requires three sort of properties, right, to work. We need the CloudWatch URL, we need the log group name, and then we need the time. The previous function, which is the log group get function, this one will take care of, let's say, resolving all of those values for us. So as you can see, we were in the variable, we were returning everything we needed. And in the second webhook, which is the action, we get them from the conversation. So as you go through a conversation tree, everything that we collect, whether it's from an action, variable, slot, everything is available to you inside those webhooks. So you can actually manipulate it and do different things. So as you can see, this is parsing all of those sort of the payloads into the message itself, right? So you can see here is your filtered log group, and then I just mentioned the log group that comes from the conversation, the URL, the log group name, as well as the time, which is essentially just a stringified time so that it's humanly readable. So let's actually go back to NLX Studio and add our payload fields, not filters. So the ones that are required here, I'm going to copy them. And this is totally the opposite of what we'd be doing, because obviously the code just doesn't just fall into our hands. So usually we would just define them here first and then write the code. But since the code is already written, it requires some back and forth.
I wish that was the case. Just have a bunch of variables and codes written for me. Like
Exactly.
90% of my job right there.
I'm going back to CallFormation to copy that webhook quickly and go back to the action. So right now our action contains that webhook URL as well as the payload fields that we're going to need. So I'm going to hit save. And now we're ready. We have all that we need to essentially complete the experience. So let's go back to the intent.
Time to package it all up then, huh?
Yep. And then let's go back to our let's go back to our API tree right here. And then for this, the node type was going to be an action, right? And then notice that this action requires payloads, right? So remember how those payloads were defined in the action, and then the webhook was sending them. So right now, I can actually get them from the variable, right? So they get passed. Essentially, what this does is everything that the variable captured will get passed on to the action, so the action can use it. So I'm just essentially picking everything that's necessary. So let's double check the call.url, the log group name, as well as the time. Perfect. I'm going to save. And then right here, I'm going to add the condition saying there is a CloudWatch URL, right? So I'm just going to say exists. And I'm going to say another condition, which is obviously it's not empty. So I'm going to say false here, lowercase. Right. So let's kind of review what this does, right? So capture the log group, or we jump the step. We capture the time frame, or we jump the step, depending on what the user said. We enter the pass-through node, which is essentially will evaluate all those nodes and basically figure out which path to take, right? And right now there's two, let's say, possible paths. One is obviously with the condition that there's nothing in the log group, so I'm just going to say the log group is empty. The second one is I understand that the log group is not empty, and I actually have a CloudWatch URL. Therefore, I'm going to send a message to Slack, right? So here, I'm just going to say, I just sent you a Slack message. Okay. Right. So, and let's just have something for failure, saying Slack webhook failed. So we can get some feedback if something happens. All right. So this is essentially our conversation tree that should be able to capture all of these. So let's actually go back to the bots, back to Howdy. And you can see I have the attached intents here. I'm going to quickly attach it and save it. And finally, we're going to go build let's say the new bot, right? And as Andre was saying, this is reusing the Lex roles as well, right? So we don't really have to link anything anymore. This is essentially retraining the Lex bot that you have on your account and automatically deploying it. And while this is doing its own thing, I just remember that these sample templates don't have all the permissions. Therefore, I am going to go to the role of my log group Lambda and adjust the policy just because it needs to, let's say, access the log groups. And for that, I honestly do not remember the full permission, but I know it was something along the lines of filter. So just to be quick here and not bore anyone,
Just do logs.
I'm just going to do logs start.
Yeah, exactly. Not the recommended best practice.
Yes,
but
but in production. Review and save, right? So now I should have all the permissions for my log group get. And let's check back with the bot. It was built. I'm going to hit deploy now. Create the deployment. And hopefully by the end of the deployment, we can actually test it and see it work. And After that, we're going to essentially show you how quickly we can actually deploy this solution as an Alexa skill without actually, like, let's say, having to rewrite any of the content. So it looks like it was deployed. So let me just check back if it works. Great. So I'm going to say, show me the logs, right? This is the first. Let's say this is the first time where it didn't capture any slot, right? So in this case, I could actually pick something. So I'm not even gonna select it. I'm just gonna say count lambda. Which time frame, right? Well, let's say past 3 minutes. Great. So the log group is empty for that time frame. Now let's actually look what happened, right? If I go back to this webhook, let's actually look into the CloudWatch logs to see if it received the request, right? 1 second, there you go. Perfect. Yep, you received the request, and then this is kind of hard to read. I'm not going to make you read through it, but essentially the body will contain everything that you need, whether it's the variable, the slots that it captured. You can see time frame here. And then there's also a thing called conversation context, which essentially, if you want to keep, let's say a conversation is an exchange of messages over 5 minutes, right? And then you capture relevant information from one intent to the other. You might want to, let's say, reuse that information throughout the conversation and not ask again for it, right? You can do that with the conversation context, which is actually maintained throughout the whole conversation. So let's actually try this thing again, because obviously now we have logs in the past 3 minutes. So I'm just going to reset here and just say, show me, the logs for the account lambda. So now let's try and see if we can jump to just asking me what the time frame is. Perfect. So it captured the account lambda as the slot. Therefore, it's not going to ask me again what it is. So it just jumps to time frame, right? So let's just say past hour. Oop, I just received this message. Let's go here. Boom. So it just said, here's your filtered group, and then it gives me the log group as well as the link, and then for the past 1 hour. So I'm just going to copy this link so that it doesn't open any other tabs. And then go here, paste it, and let's see. Boom. So you can see it's filtered by 1 hour, and then it gives me the logs, which is simply just the 3 times I ever invoked this function.
So I know it shouldn't have surprised me because of like what's being used for like this back end, but like that was fast. Like
Yeah,
that was
quick.
like you clicked enter, and then I heard that notification. I was like, there's no way that was what it was, but I mean, of course it was. It's built on serverless and everything, which is going to be able to fire off really quickly. But yeah, that's pretty cool.
100%. So right now we kind of had this, and it works. Let's actually try this and say it at the same time. I remember I just had one training, let's say, phrase that contained both slots. So let's see if we can actually make it work with that. Show me the logs for the account lambda for the past 1 hour.
So just do less, so it's different. Make it 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Yeah. To show the dynamic aspect of the demo.
There you go. It worked.
Man, that was quick. You're right, Taz. So for those in chats that have ever been on pager duty, imagine getting a text at like 2 a.m. that something's on fire in prod, and you wake up and you instantly are able to say, hey, Alexa, can you get me those logs real quick? And boom, it's in your Slack.
So speaking of Alexa,
Yeah.
let's make it say that.
Just quickly pasting this here. Yep, 30 minutes. Perfect. Okay. Yes. So let's actually try and do this for Alexa. But before, let's say, we create the Alexa channel and whatnot, let's actually link our Alexa account. So there's this feature where we can essentially link to your Alexa developer console, and this sort of account linking will manage your Alexa skills that you create through NLX Studio. And Andre can touch more on that as I do
Yeah,
this.
we very similar to conceptually to what we do with Lex. You set up this one-time integration, and once it's done, you can create, build, manage like skills from within NLX Studio all the way to your Alexa console. You can see all the different permissions that we require. It never impacts your existing skills that you haven't created or used with NLX Studio, so it's safe in that respect. Plus, we never really delete anything as a safety mechanism.
Okay.
That was it. That was us linking up the Alexa account to this NLX Studio account. And the interesting thing here, so in order to create an Alexa channel, you have to provide a skill invocation name. Let's maybe call it
CloudWatch.
CloudWatch, yeah, sure. Or Howdy Partner, whatever it is. But CloudWatch is easier because it's just, there we go.
Yep.
And if you click optional properties, you'll see that there's an application ID field that's optional. By default, you shouldn't fill this out. And if everything goes well, once Vlad hits create, we're going to see that pre-filled because NLX Studio under the hood actually created a shell Alexa skill for you since you provided that integration.
Yep.
So now we have the channel. The last piece that we need to do now that we have a new channel is to make sure that the two intents that we attached to this bot have content for the Alexa channel.
Yep. So I simply went to the greeting intent. I'm going to hit create on the Alexa tree, and I can either create a new one. Actually, I can clone the API tree. Right. So if you have the same content and you just want to reuse it and don't want to do it again, you can just clone the content that you had before with a click of a button, and as you can see, it's the same content that we had, even with the synonyms and everything. And let's quickly go back to the AWS logs intent and clone this as well. Perfect. So as you can see, let's look at it. Yep, we have everything we need. Perfect. And now all we have to do is simply go to the bots. We're going to Howdy for the builds, and we are going to create the build again.
Cool. And in the meantime, Vlad, maybe go to the Alexa developer console so you can show everyone that the skill for now is just a shell. So maybe refresh.
Oops.
Oh, yeah, there we go. So you'll see that the skill, until you, I guess, deploy the NLX Studio bot, the CloudWatch skill will just be purely a shell. It doesn't have any settings. And once the deployment is complete, we're going to refresh this page, and you're going to see all the configuration that kind of maps into what we did into NLX Studio. So
let's see, back to Studio.
Yeah.
And deploy.
And again, we need to select Lex as an NLP engine, as an engine, mainly because we have channels other than Alexa, right? So in this case, we need just to have the capability to function over the API channel. So, Vlad, if you go back to the developer console in Alexa and go to CloudWatch,
let's refresh and see.
We should be able to see. There we go. So you can see there's already something. If you click on them,
slots, for example, let's just click on one slot, right? So you can see the values here. And it kind of maps to the synonyms. So remember how we had the slot values plus their synonyms? It essentially ports that fully to Alexa console. As you can see, it just completed the build here on the Alexa side. And we can also go to intents, for example. Let's check AWS logs. We also have these training phrases. You can see the slots, similar to what we do, where it maps them.
And finally, if you just go to test, because this is a test skill, for now we have to enable it for testing under an account. I actually have my phone over here with the Alexa app ready to test and do an audio example. So let's give it a shot. Let me compose the phrase in my head before I mess this up. So,
this is it, guys. This is the pinnacle right here.
Yeah. did you call it the account Lambda? Is that
Yeah.
what it is? Okay.
Yeah.
Tell CloudWatch to send me the logs for the account Lambda.
Okay, here's Uber. Do you speak?
No, not Uber. Wait, let me make sure I. Your skills.
Is it enabled?
That's what I'm looking to make sure it's enabled.
Yeah. So for everyone in the chat, for Alexa skills to actually when you develop one, you have to enable it. Let's say if you want to use it on your phone or your devices, you have to actually enable it in the settings. I think it was.
And you called it CloudWatch, right?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Is that what
It is called that, yeah.
Or maybe it's called Howdy. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
No. Well,
let me kill the NLX app. I think it didn't refresh when I initially opened up the session.
although I think we can also test.
Yeah, test it there too.
But let's see. Type of. Okay. Let's just say show me the logs for the. Let's see.
Are you trying to stop for logs for the account Lambda?
Oh wait, I need to do ask, right?
Yeah, you have to tell CloudWatch. You have
Yeah.
to specify the skill name.
There you
I
go.
forgot.
That's the importance of the invocation name, everyone.
Yep. Always remember that.
Our top result is the accountant, AD. It's $4.99.
Right, what
Don't
happened?
With
think-
delivery by August 11th.
There you go.
Refresh.
I don't know what everyone's doing after the show, but if you guys want to have a little show watching party together,
Apparently, accountant is on sale, $4.99.
Again, real demo, as you can see.
yeah, real demo. This is how you know it's real.
Can't I just say tell CloudWatch hi, for example?
Hi there.
Oh, perfect.
How
Okay.
can I help?
Maybe there is something wrong with the. I don't know the enabling of the scale probably. Let's try again. So, tell CloudWatch with the space to show me the logs.
What log group do you want?
Okay, so let's just say count lambda
What time frame?
past 23 minutes.
I just sent you a Slack message.
Okay. Wow. And there you go. So, I don't know. Do you want to try it with the voice again?
I mean,
Let's
I
do
could,
it.
but that definitely
Right, yeah.
prove the concept. But let's give it a shot. For some reason, it's not showing up because we did last minute before the demo because that's a wise thing to do. I created a developer account for Vlad under my Alexa account, and for some reason in my Alexa app, I'm not getting the new.
Oh, I think we can use the microphone here, no? Should work.
Yeah.
Oh no, they're enabled. Oh wait, let me try again. So let me just play your. No, I'll replay whatever you did.
All right.
So.
In case you
Tell
all
CloudWatch.
didn't know, Andre and Vlad, are together.
Not sure about that.
Yep, we're in the same room.
Yep.
If you haven't figured it out,
Okay, so
try again.
tell CloudWatch to show me the logs.
I'm not sure.
It's not picking it up yet. Well, nonetheless, I think if you try through the
Let's
browser,
try it through the browser. Okay, so let's try again. Tell CloudWatch. Oh, well, oops.
you have to hold it.
Oh, I have to hold it. Hi. Tell CloudWatch hi.
Sorry, I don't know that one.
Tell CloudWatch hello.
Sorry, I'm not sure about that.
Oh, it
Oh, it
Makes it
captures it as one. So for those that are watching, the invocation name needs to be two words or more. And because this is Alexa, I believe that it's catching it just as a one single word.
Yep.
and it's probably because CloudWatch is such a known name that it's
Yeah.
it just puts it together.
Maybe say tell CloudWatch hello.
All right.
It's a little bit more robotic. But
Tell CloudWatch hello.
Hi there.
There you go.
How can I help?
Oh,
Okay. Let's do. Let me think. Okay. So, tell CloudWatch to show me the logs.
What log group do you want?
Nice.
Okay. Let's just
there
say
it goes.
one that doesn't have anything, right? So, ECS cluster.
What time frame?
Past 24 hours.
The log group is empty for that time frame.
There you go. So that's true because remember, it was linked to the empty one. Now,
Nice.
let's go back to Studio because we've had a lot of conversations, right, so far with Alexa. And Studio doesn't just come with, let's say, the build and manage for those conversational applications. It also comes with the conversation history and some analytics. So let's actually go into the conversation history. As you can see, we currently have two. So one of these was saying hello. And remember that Alexa's privacy focused, therefore it's not going to, let's say, give us the full utterance of what a user says, but we can capture the slots. So if I click on the second conversation, you'll actually see that there's something like a slot. You can kind of tell what's happening, right? So what log group do you want? Account Lambda, that was essentially the slot. Therefore, we can actually put it in the conversation. And then the time frame, which is this format. And you can kind of tell what happened, right, during all of these conversations. And then we also have an analytics side, which obviously it captures a lot of information, and it will look more full, I guess, as you have more conversations, but it essentially shows you kind of the volume of conversations, the top intents. This is a cool feature where we can annotate certain nodes in the conversation tree. So for example, let's say if I wanted to say that when I receive a Slack message, that, let's say, workflow was fully automated, right? So I can actually mark that conversation tree node as automated, which will be reflected in the analytics. So you can kind of use this for business applications where you want to either see how much automation you get from your conversations, and you can specify at which points you capture these. Mm-hmm. And you also have things like helpful and unhelpful. So in many cases for customer service, for agents, they might ask, was this helpful or not? You can also essentially tag those conversation tree nodes so they reflect in the analytics.
Yeah, I think that this is pretty cool. And like, I mean, we're just capturing the logs with this particular example, but you could do all kinds of things, like with your AWS account if you wanted. One terrible example that I wouldn't endorse, but I think it would be funny, is like a self-destruct. You know, and just, I don't know, delete CloudFormation templates or something. Who knows? Like, you wouldn't want to do that, obviously, because like having your infrastructure controlled by a voice skill might not be a best practice. But like the amount of functionality that you can have, though, like I love the logs idea, and what's cool about it is like it's just sending you a URL for you to access, and so you still have to, you know, have access to that console. You have to have an IAM role or user to be able to access that anyway.
Yep.
So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and good point there, Taz, because basically you can ask yourself, like, where do I take this from here, right? Because it's useful. I mean, it gets you the link with the time frame, but maybe, let's say you have a super huge application with, let's say, thousands of logs an hour, right? This might not be the best scenario, right, to just give you the timeline. So let's say another use case, if we wanted to make this even more sophisticated, is we could actually go back to the intent, and we could create another slot that is, let's say, a filter. So we can essentially apply a log filter to that log group, so it also filters it. So it could be, let's say, if you have a standard of logging errors in a Lambda function, then you can kind of create a pattern, right, which you can filter on. And using that pattern, you can actually make your conversational assistant use that pattern to give you the logs, right?
Sure.
The ones that you are actually looking for.
Yeah, because if you have like a Lambda that is active, chances are you're not going to have just like a few lines of logs. If it's actively firing, you're probably going to get, hundreds to thousands depending on how active your application is. And so being able to filter that would be pretty cool. It's like, just show me the errors. I don't need to know all of the successful logs.
Exactly. And I mean, out of the box, it could be as easy as, hey, I have this webhook, nobody else uses it, and in this, let's say, place where I call the filter logs, I know there's a parameter to essentially add the filter expression. I could just hard code it, or I could make it a slot. And similarly, as I did with this, let's say, map, right? I could have another map called, let's say, filters, right? And then one could be error logs, and one could be, I don't know, let's say, info logs, or maybe warning, right? So you could essentially have the filter expression here, whatever that might be, that would essentially map to a slot. So you'd have another slot for the filter, and you could have as many as I guess you wish, and it would apply it, right? And if you manage to say that in a whole sentence, again, it will kind of like apply everything and jump through the tree, so you don't have to say, well, which log group, which time frame, which filter. You can just say it all at once, and it will just give you the results.
I think I would want one that allows me to speak a custom regex filter. Open bracket, capital A dash Z, close bracket, curly brace 3. Something easy like that. I can't.
Yeah.
I think that'd be amazing. How functional is that? But no, I think there are some really, really good use cases for that.
Definitely.
For sure.
So that definitely concludes our showcase. I don't know if anyone else has any other questions, but
does anyone have any questions? Put it in the chat.
But yeah, so like just kind of in summary, like where would if people want to learn more, what would you encourage them to do to get started?
We would recommend for just informational stuff on the company, just go to NLX.ai. And if you want to just jump straight into NLX Studio, just go to the AWS Marketplace, search for NLX Studio, and subscribe for free. If for some reason the 1,000 conversations a month are not sufficient for you, let us know. We'll be happy to upgrade you. Just say you saw us on Howdy Partner, and we have a Slack community channel where if you bump into any issues or have interesting use cases or features and things like that, we're very, very eager to take them into account.
Yeah, and in all the code that you used, those webhooks, those were all also available on the GitHub that we've linked in the chat as well. So if people want to go and build off of that, they can.
Exactly. And then additionally, let's say we have some templates for bots. So let's say if you don't really know where to start or you don't know what's possible, we also have quick start templates, which essentially, let's say, I'm just going to give it a name. Quick start. No, wait, actually, my bad. It's the template itself. So we have a few bot templates. Let's say a common one would be a meeting bot, right? You would want to schedule a meeting. So this will create all the resources behind the scenes. You can kind of prefix them, so it creates them, and you can kind of distinguish them with what you were creating and what was created automatically. So this, you can see it creates a bot, the intents, the trees, an action, and a variable as well. So if I were to click finish, this would essentially go ahead and create all of these for me. And you could simply just go and create the channel and start linking it to your Lex account and start playing around.
So I see there's one question from Chuck. In the Alexa integration, are all required intents to create a publishable skill included post-build, or does it need to be tweaked? For the Alexa, yeah, so Vlad, if you scroll down a little bit, we have a section called default intents. So we map onto things like fallback, and I can help unknown, like if you don't understand something. And then we also have like a welcome default intent, which maps, if I'm not mistaken, to the Alexa launch request. So the way you control those default bare minimum intents that Alexa requires is through these default intents. And you can choose to either respond with a quick reply, so like just plain text, or you can point the default intent to an actual intent to get configurability. So for instance, if you want to introduce the concept of like user profiles or accounts, right, to be able to say, hey, Taz, how's it going? Like, welcome back. How can I help you today, right? You'd want to create you'd want to then point, for instance, like a default welcome intent to a more sophisticated intent to build up that functionality. Thank you, Chuck. And thanks everyone for chiming in and for asking all the questions.
Yes.
I was just reached out to personally with the question, why did we not respond to the favorite Ben Affleck movie, and which one is your favorite? Anyone? I guess we're not Ben Affleck fans. The Accountant is our favorite because that's the first one we can think of at the moment. So I think that answers that question. So cool. Well, I think we did it. I think that we
Yeah. Great job, guys.
Yes. So a couple of things just outstanding is one. We have another episode coming up on Wednesday. Join us to chat with Trek 10 and the SAM team. So we're going to be learning about some serverless stuff with that. And so again, same time. It's 2 p.m. Pacific, and that'll be on Wednesday of this week. And beyond that, we have the most difficult part of the show, I think, which is the sign-off. We have to decide on a sign-off. Oh,
right.
A follow-up on that. For those who want to tune in on Wednesday, Sam went GA, so they're going to be talking about that. So it'll be pretty fun for all of you serverless developers on the show, or that are watching right now. But anyway, sign off. So we've got a couple options here. One is y'all come back now. You hear? Giddy up. And what was the last one, Braden? Do you remember?
I can't never remember. I've done this a few times and I can never remember.
I can never remember them.
Y'all come back now, something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So which one do you
go
want?
with that.
Or if you have any happy trails, that's the third
Happy
one.
trails.
Thank you to the ghost producer in the chat. So which one should we sign off on? Happy trails, y'all come back now, or giddy up?
I vote y'all come back.
Okay. I like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's good.
So on the count of 3, we're going to go for it. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Y'all come back now.
Y'all come
You hear?
back now.
Thanks again for everyone for joining.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you next time.